Joining us from Canberra also in our Parliament House studio is Darren Chester, who, as Trudy mentioned, has this morning been announced as making a return to Cabinet in that reshuffle. He does remain the Minister for Veterans Affairs. Darren Chester, congratulations firstly on your elevation back to Cabinet. That must be a good feeling.
Oh, good afternoon, Ash, and I've got to say it's nothing about me, it's all about the veteran community, defence personnel community who I represent. I think it's good for the veterans in particular to have their minister in Cabinet. I think it's a reflection of the Prime Minister's commitment to putting veterans and their families first. And I think our announcement yesterday regarding the new Commissioner for Prevention of Suicide in defence and veteran communities is an indication of just how serious we're taking the issues that exist there. So, look, I'm honoured to be in the role, but it's not about me. It's about what we can do for our veterans and our serving men and women and their families.
I'll get back to that veterans announcement shortly, but first on the announcement we've just heard from the Prime Minister, Keith Pitt, your Nationals colleague, has also been installed to Cabinet. He goes there straight from the backbench, reportedly due to a sweetener deal Michael McCormack made for his vote in the ballot on Tuesday. Is Keith Pitt deserving of that seat at the cable? Does his support for nuclear power make him a good fit for that new portfolio?
Ash, I'm calling bulldust already. There is no way that any deal has been done. Michael McCormack doesn't work like that. I know from my own position, I didn't ask Michael for a job. He doesn't offer jobs going into votes like that. Keith Pitt is there because an opportunity arose through the resignation of Matt Canavan and through the resignation of Bridget McKenzie. That's how Keith Pitt and myself ended up in Cabinet. Two opportunities arose and Michael filled those positions. But to suggest that some special deals been done behind the scenes, I think it's very unfair on both gentlemen. I know from a fact, from my dealings with Michael McCormack, he's straight down the line. There's no way he would have offered a deal because he didn't offer one to me and he certainly didn't do one to Keith Pitt.
What about Keith Pitt's support for nuclear power? Does that make him a good fit for that new portfolio?
Well, Keith, a lot of people who haven't probably met Keith wouldn't realise his background in engineering and electrical engineering. He is passionate about issues of energy security and reliability and baseload power, so he has some very strong opinions on those, and he's one who will explore the intricacies of the policy detail. I mean, he wouldn't mind me saying this, he's a bit of a policy wonk in that regard. He's very passionate about that issue. He's also a determined advocate for North Queensland and regional Australia more broadly, so I think he'll do a good job in the role. He's been looking for an opportunity to go up the ranks a bit, and he's got that opportunity now.
We've already heard from Michael McCormack that he expects Bridget McKenzie to be rehabilitated and make a return to the front bench down the track. Would you expect the same for Matt Canavan, who also, as you know, has been touted as a rising star? He's been an effective operator for your party.
Well, I think you're right to point out, Ash, that people like Bridget McKenzie, Matt Canavan and others in our party room have a lot of ability. We're fortunate in that regard. I mean, sure, they're on the backbench for now, but a backbench member's role isn't insignificant. The backbench member's role will be to bring forward good policy initiatives, can be a bit more creative sometimes in terms of the things they're able to bring out into the public eye and perhaps flesh out details in consultation with their constituents. So I think both Bridget and Matt will be very active backbenchers. They have enormous capabilities. They have a good understanding of the challenges we face in regional Australia, but they also understand the opportunities. And that's one of the things that Nats are very good at, is bringing forward the opportunities for helping our communities prosper. We want to build a better, a stronger and a more prosperous regional Australia, and the way we do that is by fighting together as a team here in Canberra. So I think Bridget and Matt have big futures ahead of them.
What do you make of this idea for the party to adopt the need for a two-thirds majority in any future Nationals leadership spill? Would that help bring stability, do you think?
Look, I think in this current environment, this current political environment where everything in the news cycle is very compressed and there's a rush for stories and to break things first, sometimes these leadership speculation stories get a wind of their own or a tail of their own, whatever you want to call it, and there's not much behind them. So I'd suggest that it's a policy area within our party room, with the management of the National Party, we need to take a closer look at. I think it's an idea well worth exploring. I'm not sure of the exact arrangements about whether it would be, two-thirds or half of the party room or what it might be, but I think it's well worth having a much closer look at it.
But things need to change from where they're at now, is that what you're saying?
Well, I've got an appetite for change. I've got an appetite for change in that regard. I just think it would help in terms of that unity of purpose I talked about earlier in the week, and making sure that we can just get united behind our leadership team and focus on the things that matter to regional Australians. The moment we're talking about ourselves, regional Australians are switching off, and we know we've got big challenges in our regional communities right now. The drought is still ongoing, the bushfires have hit large parts of regional Australia, there's the existing challenges we had around health and education services and attracting doctors to the bush, for example, but also the infrastructure challenges, better connections of whether it's road, rail, telecommunications or energy reliability and resilience of our energy networks. They're all big challenges that impact on regional communities' capacity to be prosperous, to thrive, and to encourage young people who have grown up in regional areas to stay in those regional areas and have a great future for them and their families.
Let's look at that announcement yesterday of the creation of a permanent national commissioner to investigate veteran suicides. There is a push for the commissioner to come from a non-military background. The decorated soldier, Ben Roberts-Smith, just one, arguing today that it should be a truly independent role for someone with no military background. Do you share that view?
Look, I think Ben has raised a good point, and I think that's the sort of feedback we need to have a close look at as we look to the appointment, first of all, the interim commissioner, but then the permanent commissioner as well. So I won't be making this appointment by myself. It'll be in close consultation with the ex-service community, with my own department, obviously, and with Cabinet as well, I expect. So it's an important appointment. It's one that we need to get right, because what it effectively provides for us, Ash, is a rolling Royal Commission. It's going to give us the permanency, the opportunity to look closely at these issues of self-harm and suicide amongst veterans and Defence Force serving members. So we've got time to get it right. I want to move quickly, but we have got time to get it right, and the feedback from people like Ben Roberts-Smith will be absolutely considered as part of the recruitment process.
We know that there has been a lot of focus on your department's inability or refusal to release specific figures surrounding claims for post-traumatic stress and alcohol dependence. Are those figures likely to be publicly released during this process? Why the reluctance to be transparent about those figures so that we all can really see it laid out in terms of the extent of those problems?
Actually, I'm not sure what you're exactly referring to. We do a lot of work with the Australian Industry Health and Welfare in terms of detailed reporting of the issues impacting on our veterans. So if there's a figure that you're concerned we're not providing for you, I'm very happy to follow up. But I would say more broadly, aside from confidentiality reasons for individual cases, we would obviously want to protect people's identities, but in terms of broader trends, I'll be very happy to provide information for you if that would assist in some news reporting. But we're very conscious on focusing on health and well-being of our veterans, but also recognising the vast majority of our serving men and women develop skills in the Defence Force around resilience and leadership and teamwork and a great work ethic and problem solving, all skills that transition very well to civilian life. But for some who are injured, whether it's physically or have experienced mental ill health, the transition is difficult. And they're the people we need to make sure we're supporting, make sure we're giving their families the support they need as well, and delivering the services right around Australia where they need them. So these are all challenges that I accept. I accept we haven't solved all the problems yet. I think we've made some good progress, but I also am excited by the prospect of taking some of those issues into the Cabinet room and having a broader conversation with some of my Cabinet colleagues about how we can do more for our veterans and our serving personnel.
You are, of course, a member of Gippsland, a region heavily affected by those recent bushfires. How does it make you feel when you hear your colleagues within both the National and the Liberal parties deny the link between climate change and the fires, and the argument that more coal-fired power stations are needed in this country?
Well, I think, Ash, we saw on, I think it was Tuesday in the House, where the speeches were made in relation to the condolence motion for the bushfires, and my neighbour across the border, the member for Eden Monaro, Mike Kelly, really extended the hand of bipartisanship across the chamber, saying we need to work together more in this place on some bipartisan policy in this area. This has been going on for 10 or 15 years, the division in the parliament on these issues. So I accept Mike's offer, and I think we can work better across the chamber.
I'm more talking though about the division within the coalition as opposed to the division with the Labor Party.
But the point I'm making is I think there's a lot of unity of purpose across the chamber. There will be people, I guess, at the fringe of the argument on either side, either extreme one way or the other. But I think the broader centre of the parliament, both within the Labor Party, Liberal National Party, and even the crossbench, there is a broader consensus here if we can work hard to achieve it. And I thought Mike Kelly's comments the other day, as the member for Eden Monaro, as an electorate which is impacted by fire, I thought he made some very sensible comments about how we need to work in a more bipartisan way. And I'm very happy to take up that challenge and work with Mike and others on how we can get a sensible centre where people can agree on the course forward that we can lock in policy for a long period of time to give business that certainty, give community confidence we're all heading in the same direction. I'm a little bit worried, Ash, that there's a bit of climate anxiety out there as well at the moment, where some people are making very extreme comments that are worrying our younger generation to a level that perhaps is not warranted to that level. So if that makes any sense, I'm trying to get a balanced approach to this issue, recognising that climate is changing, recognising we need to do our share of reducing emissions, but also working in a way that does that practical action on the ground of hazard reduction and clearing that will help make our towns safer. It's not a simple policy area, but I think it's one where we can get a broader consensus.
But how is it helpful then when colleagues within the National Party are pushing for more coal-fired power stations, if you hold that view, as you've just explained, that you think emissions need to be reduced?
But actually, if you have a coal-fired power station today, if, for example, one was built today, it would have far lower emissions than the ones we built in Latrobe Valley 40 and 50 years ago. So we've got to talk about the emissions rather than how you achieve that baseload energy. So if they're arguing for a low emission technology which is being used around the world to replace a high emission power station, well, that still achieves that net result of reducing Australia's emissions. So it's not just about the type of fuel you use, or whether it's renewable or whether you use fossil fuels, it's the emissions reductions you can achieve. So I think there is an appetite within the Parliament to work towards a more consistent and accepted policy in this area. And I refer again to my colleague from across the board and Mike Kelly's comments this week. I think he made a really good contribution, and it's one that we need to have a closer look at.
Darren Chester, appreciate your time. Congratulations again on that elevation to Cabinet, and we look forward to speaking with you again on this program